for being here. Today, I'm going to present you kind of a general talk about one of the subjects that I personally really care about in my research, which is trying to really define what we mean by the habitable zone, and maybe trying to expand it to what I would like to call, for example, the abyssal habitable zone in ocean worlds, inner solar system, and beyond. And so this is a subject that I personally care about a lot because I do spend a lot of time deep underwater. So when I'm not at the lab over the weekend, I usually go dive, doing free diving. So these are pictures taken in the Puget Sound here. As you can see, there's this 7 feet long lingcod here. I was looking at one of my buddies on the side. But these are the type of environments I really enjoy spending time in. And so I'm very curious about exploring the one that potentially exists in other places. So when we think about the canonical habitable zone, this is how it is defined. It's the region at which liquid water is stable at the surface of a planet. And so if you're too, if you're closer, then it becomes too hot. If it's too far, it becomes too cold and the surface frozen. And so the main problem that I have of them, and the main problem that we have as a community with this definition is actually a very deep problem. And this deep problem is the fact that potentially we expect, like best case scenario, we find life. Most probably it's going to be microorganisms. And on Earth, 90% of the biomass of microorganisms like archaea or bacteria are underground. They're below the surface. And this is where like most of the biomass is. And it goes all the way down to 10 kilometers. And the actual limit is not pressure. In that case, it is actually temperature with roughly 122 Celsius. And the second thing is that the deep oceanic environment, so kilometer under the surface, are where we are one of the possible places where we could have the origin of life on Earth itself. So clearly, just trying to look at the surface condition as a guiding rule for exploring habitability is very limited, and I would say actually ill conceived. So one of the interesting things with pressure is that when you, and depth in general, when you go down at depth, the pressure increases. And specifically for water, what happens is that you actually extend the stability range of water with pressure. So as you can see here on the left, you have a phase diagram of water that is zoom in near the triple point between ice, water vapor, and liquid water. And as you can see from the triple point, if you increase pressure, the melting point, so the line between ice and water, decreases in temperature. If you zoom out and actually try to figure out what is the lowest possible point temperature where you can have liquid water, this is the diagram on the right where you have pressure as a function of temperature. I've also included here the conditions where Earth oceans are. As you can see, the lowest possible temperature you can get water is not 273 Celsius, not 273 Kelvin, it is 251.2 Kelvin at 2 kilobars. So this is arguably the actual limit of the habitable zone, if we just consider pure water. And what is also interesting in this diagram is that, as you can see, the stability of the liquid, especially at depth, is only constrained by the stability of solids. And here I'm talking about all of these weird Roman number ices that are present. So you have ice 1H that are represented at the top here, which is the ice that we all know. Then you have ice 2 or ice 7 at the bottom, which are a different position in the phase diagram. And all of these ices have different structures, different physical properties, etc., that need to be measured and known. And so taking that into account, we can look even in our own solar system and realize that with this in mind, 90% of the liquid water, arguably over 90% of all the liquid water in our solar system is actually beyond the snow line. Earth is actually one of the driest places in the solar system, and taking this as as a guiding rule again is probably not the best, even though that's the only place we actually know there's life for now. But the outer solar system is the best place for oceans. And for example, on Ganymede or Titan, we probably have 10 times the amount of water that Earth has. And so with this, we have two types of bodies that emerge. And we have the Europa-like bodies, where we have oceans directly in contact with the rocks. And this is potentially good for chemical exchange, which would be something that could provide nutrients very easily to the oceans and facilitate the apparition and preservation of life in these environments. And we have larger planetary bodies like Ganymede or Titan, where we would have a dense high pressure ice at the bottom. And this could actually be, and this had been pointed out several times in the literature as possibly a limitation for life, because you would just have an insulator at the surface of the rocks. So maybe it's bad for habitability. And so if we look beyond our solar system and look at exoplanets, this is a diagram that shows planet mass as a function of planet radius. This is very similar to the one that Tyler was showing last week. And here I've represented anything that is below the dashed blue line here would be more rocky, and everything that would be above would have a higher amount of volatile and possibly water, and these are potential ocean whales there. And in here we have actually two populations of ocean whales, and these are papers that were that show that you have this limit here around 1.8 Earth radius, where below that you have the super Earth. And above that, you have far more planets that are like a much higher amount of volatiles, and these would be the mini Neptunes. And this separation would come from the fact that some of them would have lost their initial atmosphere by getting closer to their star, and some of them might have been able to preserve it. And so if we put the exoplanets in the picture, this is what it looks like. We have Europa-like bodies, Ganymede-like bodies, and exoplanets that could be either one or the other. But all of these objects in our solar system and beyond represent the largest the largest liquid water reservoir in the universe. All of these water reservoirs are going to be at what I call exotic conditions, because they are going to be at conditions that we don't have in Earth oceans. That are like much higher pressures and very different temperatures. And here, the oceanic conditions are going to be controlled by the thermodynamics of the aqueous solutions. So how do the fluid compress? How do they transport heat, either through conduction or convection? How do they store heat? But also the stability of solid phases, which by this I mean ices, but also other solids that could contain some of the other compounds present, like salts or organics, and these would still be water-rich solids, so ice and hydrates. So how do we explore all of this? So this is more or less the work of my career, I guess. This is going to be many years in the making, but here is an idea of how I've actually started to do it. So the first thing to do is to try to reproduce. So you could just do models, but what we want to do is to have some kind of truth, like physical truth, to what we're doing. So the first thing to do is to actually do experiments and try to reproduce the conditions of these of the interiors of these oceans and hydrospheres in a lab. So for this, we build very simple experiments to do this. So these are examples of the type of experiments that we do. These are experiments that we can do at synchrotrons or here at UW. And so I'm not going to explain all of that, but if you want, I can. But the idea of like our strategies here is to combine two types of experiments. One is measuring the liquid thermodynamic properties using an ultrasonic sound speed experiment, or USS, who looks like an old Russian submarine. And this is the range at which it operates, so roughly to a gigapascal, a little less than that. And then combine that with measurements with diamond and ball cells, which is this machine here, which is very small. And with this, we can also measure the liquid properties, but we can also do solid liquid equilibria and do the crystallography of solids that would form there. And you see the range that we cover with DAX is actually much greater. And with both of these techniques, we can actually cover the entire range of conditions found in these oceans. So this is a perfect combination. So the ultrasonic sound speeds looks like this. So the idea is that we have a sample chamber in which we have a sound wave propagating through, and we actually measure just the echo of this sound wave. And with this, we can actually measure the sound speed in a sample. And I will show you in a second, but the sound speed gives you access to a lot of other thermodynamic properties with that. So these is like high accuracy measurements. We measure sound speed in the hundreds of ppm accuracy, which is really good. And then you have the diamond and ball cell. So the diamond and ball cell, you can heat it, you can chill it, whatever you want to do and which temperature range you want to get. But the idea is you have two diamonds that are facing each other, and then you are squeezing in between a sheet of metal, usually, with a hole in there where you have the sample chamber in there. And because diamonds are transparent in the optical range, you can actually look what's happening inside. So you can see, for example, you can have visual determination of phase equilibria. So here I have crystal growing. So you have I6 growing on the left, and you have a little cube, a crystal of I7 on the right. But you can also do a speciation, so measure the type of molecule present in the sample. So this with Raman spectroscopy, and you can do X-ray determination for volume and structure, but you can also do composition with X-ray fluorescence. So all of this can then be combined. So this is something I've shown multiple times, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But the idea is that with the sound speed combined with reference state data at 1 atmosphere, we can actually derive the equation of state for the solutions in general using Gibbs. Using local basis function developed by Mike Brown here at UW, and through determining the Gibbs energy for these solutions. But we can also do that for the solids using X-ray diffraction data and some modeling data of the vibrational energies. And so we've already done this for ICEs and quite a few solutions already. The NaCl is supposed to arrive really soon. But the idea is that we combine everything into a code that is open source, already available, and that is nowadays actually used quite a bit in the community, which is called CFreeze. So you can have access to it on GitHub. And the idea is that you have this very easy, quick access to all the thermodynamic of water at any conditions in the range of validity. And here we go all the way to 23 kilobars and all the way to 500 Kelvin. So we cover like pretty much any oceans in the solar system with this. The other things that we got interested in is the effect of chemistry, and the effect of chemistry is going to have several aspects. One of them is the melting point depression, so the antifreeze effect of solutes. So we've actually spent quite a bit of time in the lab measuring the melting point depression of different solute concentration. So we've done it for NaCl. We've done it for ammonia, we've done it for MgSO4, we've done it for a few other composition. And with that, we can actually predict how much we're going to increase the range of stability of the oceans, depending on the concentration. So these are results that can actually be correlated with the equation of state that we determine using the sound speed. So we can actually have an equivalency between the both. The other effect of chemistry that is actually quite interesting in for the case of very large exoplanets and large icy moons is looking at the solubility of compounds in the ice, like salt or electrolytes. And so we did the first experimental demonstration of incorporation of salt into high pressure ice. So here are X-ray fluorescence maps in diamond anvil cells. So as you can see, this is like 200 micron across. So it's like the size of a human hair. The crystal here is even smaller than that. And here we're able to map the amount of salt in the ice and in the liquid. And as you can see, I6 is in the violet, so has almost no salt in there. But when you look at I7, we're more in the green, which means we have far more salt in there. And this was generalized later by computation last year by our colleagues in France, who showed that this applies to quite a large amount of salts and demonstrated that I7 is actually a really good solid to actually transport solute through. So in the case of large exoplanet or even icy moons, if you have I7, you can transport probably a large amount of chemicals through it. And so that means that large high pressure mantles are probably not a chemical insulator in that case. They actually are pretty good at transporting nutrients. And this is something that I was invited to comment on in Nature Communication last year. So this is where the graph is from. The last part on the effect of chemistry that I wanted to talk about is a very interesting and kind of surprising discovery that we did during the last few years is that every time we were to squeeze something, like any droplet of non-pure water and try to squeeze it, we would end up forming crystals at the range of stability of icy moons, like in the range of the icy world's interiors. We would form crystals that we never heard of, that were not in any databases. And so that triggered trying like to actually use new single crystal X-ray diffraction techniques in diamond anvil cell, which are quite cutting edge because as you can see, like the size of the samples are extremely small. We are inside a big cell that has very small apertures. So you actually have a lot of work to do to actually either like try to increase the aperture as much as you can, and in treating the data, make the best with what you have. So these are not easy experiments. But we were able to discover like new types of hydrates, and notably for NaCl. With one of them, we were able to show that it was stable at the surface of icy worlds and could explain some of the spectral signatures potentially of Europa or Ganymede. But what I want to reflect on with this is that this is a whole new class of minerals that are water-based. So water constructing, so where the water constructs the structure of the mineral itself. And this is potentially in diversity similar to silicates. So we might be in front of this new class of like construct this whole new range of mineralogy analysis for specifically icy worlds and ocean worlds in particular. And these solids are actually important because they will control the stability range of the oceans the same way if ice are present. If you have hydrates, they will determine where the eutectic is at a given pressure. So they will actually give you the maximum possible liquid stability. But also because they exist and they could be transported vertically, they could actually be used as tracers for vertical transport and potentially used for detection of oceanic material present at the surface. So conclusion on the abyssal habitable zone. I hope I convinced you that ocean wells are arguably the most common type of habitable environment by volume in the universe. As far as we can tell from our experimental results, but also from other team experimental results and recent computation, high pressure ice is not a limit for habitability, especially if you have I7, which is really efficient at implementing solutes. That said, it's clear that the effect of chemistry is not well understood, and there's a lot of experimental study to do, notably on solubility, melting curves, and the presence or not of hydrates. What seems to be, and it is one of the part that I'm really excited about working with other faculty and students at UW in the astrobiology group in general, is trying to implement the atmosphere species to try to take into account equilibria and possible storage of relevant species that could be detected, for example, by the James Webb. So, for example, CO2, CH4, ammonia that could be stored or not inside these wells. So there is a lot of application to this of these works for modeling, detection, space mission, but also in oceanography and medical science. You would not even have too much time to talk about it. And that's very exciting time because we have less than 10 years until the first results from Europa Clipper, JUICE, and Dragonfly after that. And this will actually inform us directly for ocean exoplanets. So if you're interested and want to work with us, we have way too much work. So please join us and help us. So yeah, this is the phase diagram of all the collaborators that have helped me tremendously in these last few years. So thank you. I'll take question.
Yes.
Hi, Baptiste, great talk. I work with sea ice, and so thinking about the differences between fresh and saltwater ices, we think about brine channels. And I was wondering, with the sort of high pressure ices, do you think that the crystallized minerals that you get would do you think that those are substituted for brine channels, or do you think that you would also have some sort of more porous section?
So it's a very good question, and it's a problem that I've been pushing modelers to actually work with, because we can't do that in lab. Doing large enough sample chambers where we'd have high pressure ice in there, that would be a building size high pressure apparatus. It's just not possible. But yes, I would expect to be brine channels. The only difference here is that for sea ice, ice management is always buoyant. For high pressure ice, it depends. Sometimes if it's low concentration, the brine will be buoyant. So you will have, while you grow the high pressure ice from the bottom, you will tend to form brine channels that will sink down. But as soon as you pass a certain threshold, a certain concentration, then the high pressure, no, sorry, that's the opposite. At the beginning, sorry, at the beginning, the high pressure ice is always sinking and the brine is always buoyant. But if you pass a certain concentration, then the liquid will start to become denser than the high pressure ice and will form channels. So the range at which you will actually reach this threshold concentration is going to depend on the type of solute. And if you're going to cross the freezing point of if you're going to cross the eutectic before you reach that concentration, will also depend on the different solutes that you use. And we don't know the density of most of the solutes, and we don't know the hydrates or the eutectic of most of the solutes as well. So yeah, I would expect it to happen, but it's going to highly depend on the type of solute, and we need to, and this is something we're working on, actually. So.
Yep, Don.
So, does ferrous iron do anything interesting in these icy worlds between the water and ice interface?
I mean, I guess it would. I mean, I haven't really worked on the water rock interactions that much. I've mostly focused on the aqueous systems.
Yeah, what I would suggest is fractionate in for the liquid. You get very high concentrations potentially.
Why would you have so much ferrous iron?
Well, we had iron precipitating all over the planet, a long time, billions of years ago. From the ocean.
Yeah, from volcanic activity. Yeah. But you would still need, but it's mostly coming from volcanic activity, right? The iron. So here on ocean wells, there is no guarantee it's actually volcanic activity. So most of the ions would come from hydrothermal interaction with the seafloor, and I don't know exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah.
Other questions? Yeah. Fabian?
Yeah, you showed that I7 likes to incorporate salts, and what is that with organics?
We don't know. We don't know. We need to try that. I'm very excited to try that, actually.
Is there an intuitive explanation for why I7 is particularly good to incorporate salts?
Yeah, it's my guess is like it's mostly due to its structure, because it's a very simple cubic structure.
Okay.
So it's real easy to do substitutions.
For things like sodium chloride,
Yeah,
which is also
yeah.
cubic.
Yeah, exactly. If you start to get to larger molecules, that might start to be a little more difficult. There's obviously not just structural effects there. There's also like the interaction with the hydrogen bonding network. But like they see when you do salty I7, you see the distortion of the lattice. Like it's very, very clear in the X-ray. You see like the diffraction bands really getting very wide. So there's a lot of distortion. So it's like it's not a perfect lattice anymore. So yeah.
Steve, one.
Yeah, well, I7 is a self-flat-rated ice-1C, so it fills in all the space that's in ice-1C. Does that mean
No,
cubic
it's
ice is also a porous to salts?
it's not a self-flat rate of ice-1C, is it? I don't think so. It's a different structure.
I7?
I7, yes.
Maybe you can fight this out afterwards.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
just have one last question.
Stable is I7 over the lifetime of, say, a world like Getty. Do we expect it to, if it's present or on a future exoplanet, do we expect to be able to have it last for long periods of time, or would there be like melting phases of it altering to a different phase?
So so I7 there will be probably no I7 in Ganymede. The pressure is not high enough. But for exoplanets, it would, like, if it's there, it's there. Like there's no reason for it to like if the thermodynamic conditions are met, it's going to be there. Like there is
It's not like diamond, it's
Yeah.
not metastable.
yeah, exactly. It's not, so
I7 is not forever. Yeah.
though you can find I7 in diamonds, which is interesting.
Really?
Yeah, I7 is a mineral because it was found inside the diamond inclusion.
Okay.
It was trapped when it was surfaced, and you can actually find I7 inclusions in diamonds. So.
Okay, well, we're well beyond the hour, so let's thank Baptiste again.